Welcome to the Inclusive Leadership Coaching Podcast. I'm Terry Donahue, your neurospicy inclusion coach. I am an ICF PCC life and leadership coach, passionate about social justice and specializing in neurodiversity. My purpose on this journey is to partner with you as you build an inclusive coaching practice that expands your impact. Here on the Inclusive Leadership Coaching Podcast, we believe leadership isn't just about titles or positions of power. It's about behavior, collaboration, and creating real, inspiring change. So let's get to it. Hey, leaders, welcome back. I was reading an article by Nathalie Martinek. Nathalie is a culture and leadership analyst, capacity builder, workplace dynamics educator, facilitator, PhDer, and coach and speaker. It was her newsletter about what she calls dark neurodivergence. Don't worry, I got her permission to share this with you. And it sparked something in me. You know how I love the vibration of honesty. To get a little metaphorically personal, a long time ago, I slowly started unraveling this really messy ball of yarn in my personal life and work. You see, Nathalie's specialty is hacking narcissism. So today, we're going to be looking at how neurodivergence can show up in coaching spaces. Sometimes it's easy to spot, like when a client openly shares their diagnosis or traits. And sometimes it's more subtle, hidden in plain sight, or even mistaken for something entirely. In this case, what looks like one neurodivergent identity might actually be another, or might be used consciously or unconsciously as a form of self-protection or a way to maintain a specific self-image. This complexity is what makes our work so layered and yet so important. And don't you worry, I am going to drill this down. I'm going to be high context. I'm going to do it. As neurodivergence becomes more visible and socially accepted, especially ADHD and autism, okay. Other expressions remain misunderstood or stigmatized. And we are going to be exploring this nuance today. Personally, I've actually waited a long time to talk about this topic. It often felt like more of a psychotherapy conversation than a coaching one. But that thought is not entirely true. It can fall under trauma-informed coaching lenses. And someone needs to talk about this in coaching. So here we go. And you know what? Not only in coaching, in the workplace too. We're going to go there. There are many different identities and conditions under the neurodiversity umbrella. And it may change, and that's okay. Because neurodiversity isn't a list, it's a framework that says we all think, behave, process, and learn differently. When I say NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, falls under neurodivergence, I'm saying it through the broader inclusive lens, not to equate it with ADHD or autism, but to acknowledge the diversity of cognition and behavior that exist in the world. Okay? As coaches, we can support the executive functioning challenges associated with several neurodivergent identities, like ADHD. ADHD is not just about inattention or hyperactivity. At its core, it often involves executive functioning differences like working memory, planning, organization, and time management. What's important to know is that ADHD rarely stands alone. About 80% of individuals with ADHD also have at least one other neurodevelopmental or mental health challenge, like dyslexia. That's me. Some people might have autism and ADHD at the same time. That's called ADHD. And there's anxiety and depression, and the list goes on and on. So, when coaching someone with ADHD, we may also be navigating overlapping traits, challenges, and strengths tied to other intersectional identities. Coaches, we're not diagnosing or treating, but we can absolutely support our clients by helping them understand how these differences show up in their lives and goals. So, this article that I will be referencing is titled Dark Neurodivergence or Cluster B Traits? With a question mark. Dark neurodivergence is not a name. It was created by Nathalie. It's not a clinical term. It's a social pattern that she observed in adults who frame antisocial behavior as trauma-based neurodivergence. Before I get into my thoughts and my takeaways, I want to briefly highlight what Nathalie explores in her article. She talks about how mental health labels have evolved from clinical diagnosis to social identities. As you can see, coaches, she's more than a coach. While that shift has helped bring visibility and compassion to so many folks, it's also kind of made things a little fuzzy. This is where Nathalie's concern comes in. When people use neurodivergence to avoid growth or to deflect accountability for harm, the line gets blurry. The harm is real, the struggle is real, but responsibility, that gets dodged. She makes it clear the problem isn't neurodivergence. The issue is how people with antagonistic personality styles use these labels to function as moral shields that deflect scrutiny and interpret harmful behavior as misunderstood differences and grant instant immunity from accountability. I mean, yes, Nathalie. Yes, 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 I've seen it myself with my own eyes. Here is a real world example of what this actually looks like. Early this year, Greg Wallace, a British TV presenter, was the subject of an independent investigation where inappropriate workplace behavior were found to be valid. In a disturbing twist, he reportedly pointed to his autism diagnosis as part of his defense. This tactic flips the narrative to avoid accountability by hiding behind a diagnosis that has nothing to do with the harm caused. Let's be clear. Those with ADHD and autism or they may struggle with executive function or emotional regulation, but they are capable of self-reflection, setting boundaries and respecting boundaries, and owning their impact on others. Not just the intention, the impact. That's the difference. This is the danger of blanket framing. It erases complexity and reinforces stereotypes. When someone uses neurodivergence as a moral shield to avoid accountability for harmful behavior, it stigmatizes the entire neurodivergent community. It turns genuine neurodivergent identity into a performance of innocence. And that's just really unacceptable. We have to be able to see when something is not a trait, coaches. When it is actually a tactic, that distinction is everything. This dynamic is very real in coaching and the workplace, really wherever people are. Some coaches are of an agreeable personality style, and I did say some. I should really say most. Most are empathetic, kind, compassionate, caretaking, warm. I can go on and on. That agreeable nature can put us in danger of being manipulated. or missing red flags when clients use neurodivergent identities to avoid accountability. Not only clients, but I'm staying with coaching in the coaching practice. I'm not varying. While compassion is essential, over accommodation without clear boundaries can let harmful behavior slide unchecked. You're not pathologizing. We're not pathologizing people. We're just noticing the patterns. This might look like offering bold reflections, holding clients as autonomous, of course, and inviting deeper self-reflection while in our coaching sessions. In coaching, we must resist the urge to just validate and accommodate everything our client brings. Challenging is not aggression. It's about growth, accountability, and holding up the mirror for our clients. It's crucial to recognize when something falls outside of our scope of practice. Of course, I know we know, but you know I am gonna say it because it's true. When the work might require therapy or clinical intervention, coaches must practice discernment and set clear boundaries and hold your boundaries. Because people can cross your boundaries and push them. This means referring clients to qualified therapists and seeking guidance from mentor coaches or supervisors. Boundaries and discernment keep the coaching relationship safe and effective for both you and your client. Now, y'all know I love, love, love to give you tools and strategies and takeaways. So one way we can start seeing these invisible forces operating beneath the surface is by educating ourselves on different identities and the complex ways human behavior shows up. Okay? That's how come I know so much about these three identities. I know a lot about, actually, I know a lot about dyslexia and a couple of other ones. But anyway, understanding the acronym DARVO is another tool or takeaway, whatever you want to call it, that helps. So DARVO, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, is D. I'm dyslexic. I just acronyms mean acronyms. DARVO. So what this acronym stands for is deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender. Some of these personality styles live in victimization, pretty much a lot of them, a lot. It's an unconscious defense mechanism often used by individuals to deflect responsibility and manipulate the narrative in their favor. they may truly believe that they are the victim. This can be especially confusing when it's wrapped in emotional dysregulation and other neurodivergent characteristics, making it harder to tell the difference between someone in distress versus someone avoiding accountability. Knowing Darvo helps us protect courageously safe spaces, name harm without shame, and hold firm boundaries, even within inclusion work. This is especially relevant in the neuro-inclusion world or neuro-inclusion work. We want safe space, not space where harm gets a pass. And this is what Nathalie was saying in her article. She's saying neurodivergence isn't the issue. How it's used is what matters. Sometimes people use neurodivergent identities to avoid self-reflection or growth, and that can create harm, especially when organizations skip the important steps of due diligence. Inclusion isn't about taking people at face value without context, okay? When workplaces accept self-diagnosed labels without support structures for accountability, they can unintentionally reinforce inequity, the very thing inclusion policies are meant to disrupt. She says something like this: in today's inclusion culture, saying your brain is different sounds neutral, inclusive, empowering. Your behavior is harmful does not. But guess what? Both of those things can be true at the same time, and you're allowed to name the elephant in the room. We need inclusion that's honest. That means protecting people and calling in growth. Otherwise, we're just reinforcing the same inequities DEI is actually meant to dismantle. Okay, Nathalie? My perspective. I am educated through the University of British Columbia and many other programs in diversity, equity, inclusion, anti-racism, neuro-inclusion, and accessibility. And I have 50 years, actually, let me slow down a little bit. Close to 50 years of neurodivergent lived experience as an ADHD and dyslexic woman. I'm not even going to go into my other identities today. This could be the same old story of people designing for other people without the lived experience of those people. I don't know if that was her experience, but I'm just calling out a perspective that I have, or many people have. When you have neurotypical people making decisions about what neurodivergent people need, they're going to miss the mark. And you could put really any identity in there. Okay? Also, just because someone is neurodivergent doesn't mean they know what other brains need. And you can put other identities in there as well. That's why representation matters. That's why we need neurodivergent, inclusive leader voices at the table when we're designing neuro-inclusive policies. Not just as consultants or afterthoughts, but as decision makers and leaders in the process. At least get a committee of different identities. Inclusion initiatives are not perfect. A little reality check. They are run by imperfect humans trying to just make a difference. And that's okay. And no matter what we do, the arrogant and image-focused humans will try and manipulate pretty much all systems for their advancement and to protect their inflated self-image. The reality is that truly inclusive environments reduce the need for individual accommodations, and they work better when designed with inclusion in mind from the start. I'm not gonna keep going down this rabbit hole, but that's all I gotta say about that. So, as we wrap up, I hope I did not scare you. It's all good. It doesn't happen too often, but you need to be aware of this. We need to move away from enabling and we need to move towards honesty. This is not the whole article. As you know, it was just pieces. Please check the show notes and read it for yourself. We're diving into the real world complexities that coaches cannot afford to ignore. Not everything is as it seems. If you made it this far, thank you for staying with me in this conversation. I do have some reflection questions if you're interested. As you think about how this is showing up in your world, let's say, your workplace, your coaching practice, your relationships, consider what it means to stay discerning. Ask yourself, what am I avoiding naming? What patterns have I been excusing? Where can I hold space and accountability? If you want help navigating that, listen, I am here. If you want to understand more of what the hell I'm talking about, I am here. This is the work that I do. It's not easy. but it's deeply meaningful and it's personal. You can reach out to me. And please go ahead and check the show notes for my contact and the article Natalie wrote. And I'm going to drop in some identity information. And if you want more, reach out. And also, for this podcast, I don't get paid. And I do not intend on, I think it's called sponsoring. We have over 3,000 or close to 3,000 listeners out there, downloads and interest coming in. But the ratings and reviews doesn't really reflect that. I don't want people selling you things. That's not the point. Listen, when you leave a rating and review, it pushes the algorithms out. More people get the message, more coaches show up, and more, connection, growth, community, all happens. If you don't want to message me, you can follow me on LinkedIn or connect with me. All good. All right, leaders. All right, coaches, change makers, change initiators, and disruptors. Until next time, stay curious, stay discerning, and trust your intuition. When something feels off, I invite you to trust that and step into your power. Bye. Boom! Shakalaka! And that is a wrap on this episode of the Inclusive Leadership Coaching Podcast. If something in today's conversation got you thinking, I would love to hear about it. Connect with me on LinkedIn or at terrydonahue.com. And hey, if you're enjoying this podcast or you really want to support me, go ahead and subscribe, leave a review, and stick around. There's plenty more to come. Next time, we'll dive into even more exciting conversations. Until then, keep leading with inclusion in mind.